Alright guys, in today's video we're going to be doing our MCU villains tier list where we're going to rank from S tier to F tier 23 villains inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe from best to worst based on how memorable they were inside of these films and some other values also. So with that being said guys, let's go ahead and get into our MCU villains tier list. Let's go. So we're going to start this off with the Abomination from the first Hulk film, or really the only Hulk film inside the MCU. It was okay. It's not really memorable that much. You know, this isn't one that gets talked about very often. It's a little more memorable than some of the other, villains on this list. So because of that, we're going to add him to the D tier. I feel like that's a respectable placement for him. Next, we're going to move on to Alexander Pierce. Okay, now Alexander Pierce, if you don't remember him, was the villain from the Winter Soldier movie, okay? Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And this was the guy pretty much orchestrating Hydra's takeover. And he ends up being killed inside of that film by Nick Fury. Now, honestly, I had to do, some history, some research to even remember who this character was, because even though I love Winter Soldier, it's one of my favorite Marvel movies of all time, this character in it is extremely forgettable, and because of that, also dying to Nick Fury, attempting to kill Natasha but dying to Nick Fury, you're down bad, bro. So we're gonna add you to the F tier. Okay, you're in one of the best movies, one of the best Marvel movies of all time, but a terrible character, very forgettable. Okay, and next we're gonna move on to the Doctor Strange villain from the first Doctor Strange film, I believe that released in 2016, Dormammu. Okay, now Dormammu, he doesn't really appear throughout this entire film, okay? It's kind of a two-part villain movie with Caecilius, which we'll eventually get to. But for Dormammu, he has about, 5 minutes inside this film? He has under 10 minutes of footage of film time inside the Doctor Strange movie. But I gotta say, he leaves a lasting impression. Dormammu, even though, he has such a small scene, he's one of the most memorable villains on this list, especially when you add it to consideration villains like the Abomination or Alexander Pierce and other villains we'll get to on this list. Dormammu stands apart from a lot of those guys. He's very interesting, so I wish we got more of him. Of course, we got the famous Dormammu I've come to bargain scene, one of the best scenes inside the MCU, especially in any Doctor Strange, film or quote, anything like that. So because of that, I think we're going to put Dormammu at the top of C tier for right now. I may adjust this list as we go through, which is normally what we do here when we're doing the tier maker list, okay? Now we're going to move on to Ego. Now Ego is actually another character from one of my favorite Marvel films of all time, that being Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now I know this is probably the least popular Guardians of the Galaxy film out of the entire trilogy, but personally for me, I actually really love this film. We got to learn these characters more. We got to discover more about Star-Lord, more about Peter Quill's heritage, and that being Ego is his father. Ego, the living planet, is also Star-Lord's dad. So because of that, Star-Lord is part Celestial. I thought that was really cool. And yeah, Ego left a lasting impression on me. He really did. And honestly, I think I'm going to add him right here, right in front of Dormammu, at the top of C tier, and we're gonna keep going here. Okay, so next is Ghost. Now if you don't remember Ghost, this is from Ant-Man and the Wasp, I believe, and of course this character was able to go invisible. Pretty much they got caught in a laboratory accident, and because of that they gained the power of invisibility. It was cool when I seen the movie originally, but now when you put all of the characters into perspective, this character left no lasting impression whatsoever, like a lot of other villains inside the MCU. The MCU has a villain problem, if you haven't realized it by now, and this is another one of those problems. Now it was okay, Ant-Man and the Wasp was not a bad Marvel film whatsoever, but as a villain, it's going D tier, okay? In fact, I think I have Abomination over Ghost, all right? And next, we're going to move on to Justin Hammer. Now, again, we have yet another forgettable villain inside the MCU. If you don't know Justin Hammer, he was from Iron Man 2, okay? So, again, that's kind of a two-part villain film also. Of course, we have our big bad with Whiplash inside of that film, which we'll eventually get to. But when it comes to Justin Hammer, extremely forgettable. Okay, no one's ever going to talk about this guy again, quite honestly, and we're just going to move on with that, okay? Next, we're going to move into Hela, all right, from Thor Ragnarok, my favorite Thor film out of the entire, not only trilogy, there's also 4 Thor movies now, so I don't know what you would call that, the quadrilogy, whatever you would like to call it. Hela was fantastic. easily one of the best villains inside the entire MCU, leaves a huge lasting impression on not only me, but I would assume, the entire audience that's seen that film. Of course, this is Thor's sister, and yeah, the way she took over inside this film, the way she caused pretty much the downfall of Thor's home world, Thor's home planet, the way, she comes into this film after Odin passes away and the destruction starts from there. She snaps, Mjolnir, the hammer, Thor's hammer, in half, just crumbles it into pieces, shatters it. Fantastic scene there, lets you immediately know off the rip what type of character you're dealing with here, and she was aura farming throughout this entire movie. So because of that, Hela's going to go into the A tier, and quite honestly, I could see her being moved up to the S tier, but we're going to hold that off just for right now, and we're going to move on to Ironmonger, okay? Now, Ironmonger was from the original Iron Man film. This was the main villain of that movie. Again, not as memorable as a villain, but he's better than a lot of the other villains on this list, I personally would say, and we're going to put Ironmonger at C tier for right now, the very back. He might be at the very top of D tier, quite honestly, but the reason he's so high on this list, one, he's in one of the most iconic Marvel movies, the first Iron Man movie. I absolutely love that film. Who doesn't like the first Iron Man movie? It's hard not to like. And two, Obadiah Stane, as I believe his name, he has one of the best quotes inside the entire MCU. What is that quote? We all know the quote, okay? Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps. That line alone solidifies him inside the MCU villain history. So we're going to drop him off at the very back of the C tier for right now, okay? Next, we have Caecilius on the list. Now, if you don't know who Caecilius is, this is the villain from the first Doctor Strange film. This was our main villain for the majority of this movie until Dormammu came into play at the very, very end. And honestly, Caecilius, while he's not, that stand out on this list, I did like Caecilius. Again, he's in one of the better MCU films, that being the first Doctor Strange film, and I thought he was a formidable foe for Strange to go up against on his way to becoming Sorcerer Supreme, okay? He was playing with like a lot of dark magic inside of here. He was creating, a problem within the sorcerer space, and because of that, I think he earns himself a spot on the C tier, right behind Dormammu, because Dormammu is what sticks with you after you finish watching that film. Now, next, we're going to go on to Killmonger. Now, Killmonger, of course, one of the most famous villains inside the entire MCU, and for good reason. And Michael B. Jordan did an amazing job portraying this character. It would be nice if he came back, but unfortunately, of course, he did die at the end of Black Panther. Now, this is yet another character inside the MCU that was aura farming the entire movie. He was putting T'Challa to shame, RIP Black Panther, but he was putting him to shame throughout that entire film. And I think he earns himself a spot on the S tier, okay? A little more memorable than Hela was. And the way he just took over Wakanda, his whole backstory, it was all amazing, okay? How he's, kind of a member of Wakanda, but grew up in America society. That was all fantastic. Michael B. Jordan is goated for this role, solidified himself amongst, a lot of movie watchers. And yeah, fantastic villain inside the MCU. Now, next, we're going to move on to Loki, okay? Now, Loki has been a villain really throughout the entire MCU, especially since the Avenger films, okay? Now, Loki, of course, has been a problem inside the Thor films. He's been a problem inside the Avenger films. He was the main villain for the first Avengers film, and because of that, he's solidified. He's iconic. Everyone knows who Loki is, right? Now, Loki on this list, I think we're going to add him to, it's kind of hard to say. He's going A tier or S tier. I think Loki has earned himself S tier. I think he's earned himself a placement above Hela. He's been iconic for much longer than Hela has. Of course, Hela was pretty much defeated in that movie, and we haven't seen her since, but Loki continues on, okay? We have the Loki TV series. It's one of the best streaming on Disney Plus right now. We have 2 seasons of that, more seasons to come, I'm sure. And yeah, Loki is iconic. Easily one of the best villains inside the entire MCU, the god of mischief. He's earned himself an S tier on this list. Now, moving on, we're going to move on to Malekith. Now, if you don't know who Malekith is, to be honest, I forgot about him. He is the second villain from the Thor movies, okay? This is the main villain inside Thor: The Dark World, and he is pretty much the leader of the Dark Elves inside of that film. Again, extremely forgettable, never brought up again. notoriously known as one of the worst movies inside the entire MCU, and he's the villain for that film, so that immediately puts you towards the bottom of our list here. However, I do think he's better than characters like Alexander Pierce, Justin Hammer, so because of that, we're going to put him at the back of D tier, okay? I think that's a respectable placement for Malekith. Now, we're going to move on to Red Skull. Now, of course, we really only got Red Skull for one movie as a villain, that being the first Captain America film, a very underrated film inside the MCU. I love the first Captain America film. Is it the worst in the trilogy? Yes, because his trilogy is goated, okay? He has Winter Soldier, he has Civil War, so because of that, it's naturally going to slide into last place, but this is a pretty good MCU movie, if I'm going to be honest, okay? And he does leave a lasting impression on the audience. Of course, he's kind of having like comparisons inside of this film to a famous Austrian painter. Okay, we're not going to drop his name in the video. I'm not trying to get demonetized here. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting what they did with his character. Of course, a main villain inside the World War II. And yeah, Red Skull is cool, man. I like Red Skull, but because you only get him in one film, though also we do have him returning inside the MCU in Infinity War. I thought that was awesome. We got to see where the Tesseract sent him off to, and he's pretty much the guardian over one of the stones. That was amazing to see. So because of that, we're going to add him to C tier. Okay, I'm going to put him like right here, dividing Dormammu and Caecilius. Red Skull is cool, man. I like him. I wish we got to see more of this character, quite honestly. Now, next, we're going to move on to the main villain inside the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, that being Ronan. Now, Ronan is an interesting character because he's really, you know, not that memorable. When you go back and watch these films, what's going to stick with you is the after credit scene where you're seeing Thanos, is the buildup, especially in hindsight, you're going, okay, he's just one of Thanos' lackeys, okay? That's all Ronan really is inside of this film. Of course, Drax tries to test him, he runs at him, gets demolished by Ronan, so that was a small feat. I think he appears slightly in the Captain Marvel film too, so that was a nice, you know, add-on. That was a nice touch there. But quite honestly, I think Ronan gets himself into, let's see, this is a tricky pick. It's crazy that no one has entered B tier, right? Okay, we're going to have to adjust the list as we go along here. But Ronan's definitely not B tier, okay? I think he goes C tier, like right there, okay? Maybe he's slightly more memorable than Caecilius, all right? I think that's a decent placement for him. A lot of the Marvel villains are C tier, as you can see. In fact, a lot of the Marvel films are C tier. And I think that's kind of where it levels out. There's not too many actually bad Marvel movies. Next, let's move on to Sonny Burch. If you don't remember Sonny Burch, this guy was a villain from Ant-Man 1 and Ant-Man 2. He essentially was trying to steal Hank Pym's technology and sell it onto the black market. Again, another very forgettable guy in a suit inside the MCU. As you can see, there's a lot of these. So because of that, he's going into the F tier, okay? Right in the middle there, right after Alexander Pierce. And yeah, that's just where we're going to drop him off. Now, do I want to touch on Thanos right away? You know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Let's talk about the greatest villain inside the entire MCU, that being Thanos, okay? Of course, legendary villain, one of the only villains, in fact, the only villain inside the MCU that wins, okay? He wins at the end of Infinity War, which is why that film is so iconic, which is why as a villain, he's so iconic, okay? He's aura farming throughout this entire movie, but not just this film, also the second film, Endgame, one of the only villains with a two-parter. In fact, the only villain with a two-parter, the only villain with two films inside the MCU, the only villain who does not get defeated within the first movie, all right? This villain, fantastic, easily the best. Of course, owner of the Infinity Gauntlet, got to wield all of the Infinity Stones at once, destroyed all of the Avengers, hit the snap. I mean, this guy was insane, guys. Okay, retired on his farm. The Avengers literally had to go back in time to defeat this guy. That's how OP he was. That's how legendary he was. And of course, he has all of the best quotes inside the entire MCU. Okay, this guy was dropping quotables with every single line uttered inside of these films. So because of that, Thanos goes at the top of S tier easily. And now that I'm looking at it again, we might adjust this. We might have to drop someone down. This is a lot into the S tier. I think we got to start adding more to the A tier, quite honestly. Now, we're going to move on, though, to Ultron, okay? Now, Ultron, I already know where I want to rank him. And this is going to be our first B tier villain, okay? Now, Ultron, of course, he had one film. He had Avengers, Age of Ultron. got to have his name in the title. That's aura alone right there, okay? He also had some cool quotes inside of this movie. He was a force to be reckoned with. Of course, he was like a Stark invention gone wrong, with Banner also helping create him. And honestly, he's in the worst Avengers film, guys. Now, this is not a bad movie. That's not what I'm saying. When I say worst, I mean worst out of the 4, okay? It means last ranked in the 4 Avengers films. That being the first Avengers, goated, okay? That being the last 2 Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, goated. Avengers Age of Ultron is one that stands out as not being as good as the rest, okay? Now, he was not bad though, and that is not a bad film. I think he was a good villain. I think he could have been a little better inside of this movie, and we're just gonna leave him right here at the top of B tier. He kind of has it to himself right now. We'll see, you know, if that gets adjusted. But next we're gonna move on to Vulture, all right? Now, Vulture, if you don't remember Vulture, Vulture is the villain from Spider-Man Homecoming, okay? He's the villain from the very first Spider-Man film, and honestly, Michael Keaton did an amazing job with this. This is a great villain inside the MCU. Now, he's not exactly S tier. Personally, I think I'd have him above Ultron because I actually really like Spider-Man Homecoming. All right, I thought this was a great villain. I thought he had great motivations. He was cleaning up the city. What the Avengers did during their film kind of put him out of whack. And yeah, he was Spider-Man's first main villain inside the MCU, a formidable villain. Of course, Spider-Man was dating his daughter. That was an amazing twist inside of that film. And Michael Keaton did a great job with this character. So we're going to put him at A tier right now. I can see him also going at the top of B, quite honestly, because he really only had that one film, that one moment. And yeah, let's move on to Whiplash, okay? Whiplash is the villain from Iron Man 2. Now, Iron Man 2, quite honestly, is my least favorite Iron Man film. One of my least favorite films inside the entire MCU. I have it towards the bottom, like D tier type territory, and I also have Whiplash there. I think he was terrible. He was too worried about his bird inside of this film. My bird, my bird. It was lame as hell. Iron Man inside of this film also just was not that good, okay? He was drunk. He was like depressed. He was experiencing PTSD. It was a weird movie. It really was. I don't think it really belonged inside the MCU. They could have done a lot better with it. Whiplash is lame, guys. If you like this character, I'm sorry, but to me, this is a lame character. I think he goes like top of D tier. I think he is better than Abomination, than Ghost, and Malekith, but he's not getting to the C tier, okay? In fact, what am I doing with Ironmonger on C tier? We're dropping him to D tier. I'm tweaking. We're going to put him like right there, okay? I think this looks, you know, more respectable as a list. Now, next, let's move on to the Winter Soldier, another brilliant villain inside the MCU. Has a movie title named after him, Captain America the Winter Soldier, one of the most essential characters inside the MCU, that being Bucky Barnes, okay? Captain America, Steve Rogers' best friend, okay? A guy that fell under Hydra mind control, ended up killing Tony Stark's parents, plays a big role inside Civil War, was a brilliant villain inside the Winter Soldier films, a force to be reckoned with. This guy was aura farming inside those movies, okay? Nowadays, he's not as great. Of course, we have like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, didn't do that amazing. He ended up getting his arm removed by Tony, so he was kind of the White Wolf. Of course, Black Panther, Wakanda gave him another arm to help him fight inside Infinity War, and he really hasn't been a force like that since the last 2 Captain America films, quite honestly. But this is an amazing villain for when he was a villain. Now he's kind of a hero, so we're going to judge him just based off when he was a villain, and when he was a villain, okay, this guy was A tier. In fact, we are going to move Vulture to top of B tier, okay? Winter Soldier, A tier. Fantastic. I think Ultron is a little better than Vulture, actually. So we're going to add it like that, all right? Now, we have Yellow Jacket, okay? This was the villain inside the first Ant-Man film. Terrible villain, if I'm going to be honest with you. Another person obsessed with Hank Pym technology, is obsessed with replicating it, and not very memorable. Very forgetful, and because of that, we're not going to spend much time on them. They're going to go into the D tier. I think they are like, I don't even know if they're better than Whiplash, and I hate Whiplash. So we're going to add them right there, okay? This list is building out pretty nicely. I like how it's looking. Next, we're going to move on to Jan Rog. So I believe how you pronounce his name. If you don't remember who this is the villain from the first Captain America film. A very overhated film. That movie is an average Marvel movie. It's not as bad as a lot of you say, okay? Now, as a villain, terrible. very forgetful. The movie itself is decent, I think, but the villain inside of it, very forgetful, and he just doesn't leave a lasting impression at all. In fact, I had to remember who he was to make this video, okay? I'm sure a lot of you watching this video do not even know his name. Like, I'm sure you know, okay, this is the villain from Captain Marvel, but what was his name again? Because he's irrelevant. All right, completely irrelevant. I think he's gonna go to like D tier. I really think just the guy in the suits is the worst of the worst when it gets to MCU villains, quite honestly. This might be, I don't know, the first one with like some type of powers that goes F tier. All right, I've thought about it. We're gonna add him to the back of D tier, okay? Damn, Malekith over him, that's crazy. I think he is though, honestly. At least this name is, at the very least, you can remember Malekith. You're not remembering Yon-Rogg. Okay, that's just not happening, all right? Next. And the final person on our list, we have Zemo. Now, Zemo, one of the most underrated villains inside of the MCU. This, of course, was the villain inside Captain America Civil War. Fantastic Marvel movie. That's like S tier Marvel movie right there, guys. At the very least, high A. Now, when it comes to Zemo, this guy was behind the scenes, okay? The Avengers had wronged him. His family ended up dying during the Avengers, you know, doing one of their rescue missions. Of course, these guys leave destruction in their pathways, and that's really unaccounted for. So I like how they got accounted for inside of these films, okay? We have Zemo plotting the Avengers against each other, which creates Civil War. The fact that this guy got such a legendary team to divide itself was amazing to see. We got one of the best, you know, battle scenes inside the MCU in Civil War because of this guy right here. Not only the airport scene, but also the scene after that when, of course, Iron Man discovers that Bucky killed his parents. And then we got Captain America and Winter Soldier teamed up against a solo Iron Man. And it was brilliant, and that was all to Zemo's doing. Now, of course, inside of this movie, he was going to off himself at the end of this film because he had accomplished his goal, and he doesn't have any family, all right? And Black Panther ended up saving him, ended up stopping him from dying, and yeah, he was a great villain. Orchestrated things behind the scenes. I love the way he moved in the shadows. He, of course, you know, brought the Winter Soldier back to life with the Hydra coating, and because of that, I think we're gonna add him at the very top of B tier. I think, damn, are we gonna put him over Ultron? Let me think. All right, I am gonna have him over Ultron. He did more against the Avengers than Ultron did, if you really think about it. He got the Avengers to divide, okay? And that's very interesting. I love Zemo. Zemo, highly underrated. And if you look at this list, you know, let's go over this list real quick. We have S tier, Thanos, Killmonger, Loki. I feel like that's proper. Maybe one of them could be moved to top of A tier, but for the most part, these are the best villains inside the MCU, easily. Next, we have Hela, Winter Soldier in A tier, respectable. Next, we have B tier with Zemo, Ultron, and Vulture. I know some of you guys may want Ultron higher, and having Zemo over him may be crazy, but I do think Civil War is a better film overall than Age of Ultron is, so we're gonna leave it like this with Zemo, Ultron, and Vulture. And next, we go to C tier with Ego, Dormammu, Red Skull, Ronin, and Caecilius. And then it's going to bring us to D tier with the Ironmonger, Whiplash, Yellow Jacket, Abomination, Ghost, Malekith, Yon-Rogg. And then we move on to the F tier with Alexander Pierce, Sonny Birch, and Justin Hammer. Now, get a good look at the list because that's our list for today. I think it's a very respectable list. All right, guys, that was the MCU villain tier list where we ranked all of the villains inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I hope you enjoyed that video. I had a great time making it, and these tier lists are really starting to grow on me. You know, I have some other ideas coming in the future as to what other tier lists we're going to do, but as for today, as for this video, I'd love to know what you thought about the tier list that we just did. I'd love to know where you would personally rank different villains on your own tier list and what you agreed or disagreed with when it came to my tier list. And with that being said, let us know all that down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on Demigod ENT, we do film and TV reactions and reviews and other movie-based content. So if you're interested in any of this movie-based content, in the right place, hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.